Well, first of all, I want to thank you guys for hanging around. You're the diehard group. I know Friday afternoons, World Series right down the street could definitely be distracting, but definitely been a great experience being here. This is my first PhoneGap days, and it's been a lot of fun meeting a lot of you guys. Today, I'm going to talk about a new product that I've been working on. It's called GapDebug. I'm sorry, GapDebug. And before I jump in and kind of get in deeper to it, just kind of give you a little bit of background. I've been working with the Cordova technology for probably about at least 3 years full time. And during that time, I've been, sometimes I think it was a curse, sometimes it's a privilege, helping debug probably at least 200 apps over that time. The company I work for, we have some tooling that does similar to a PhoneGap build and with some design tools to kind of do an automated quick push up to the cloud, pull it back down. And what we found what we found is that when users run into problems, a lot of them really don't know the tool space out there that's available to them. Part of it is because we made it pretty easy, or maybe too easy. What I'm going to do is just kind of start off with just a little personal journey, and then I'll jump in and talk about GapDebug. So just kind of step back and reflect on, when you were picking a career, what led you to a software development career? Or say maybe you're considering that right now. For me, it was coding. I just liked to code. Back in the early days, just the whole process of making something out of code was just really exciting, kind of the creative process. My wife's here, she'll probably tell you it's probably my crack. I don't do drugs, but this is could be just as bad. Kind of a combination of coding with cool projects at the time and kind of an OCD, kind of make for a bad combination of binge coding multiple days in a row. And I happen to end up working with some people that are like that just once they get on, it's just kind of a whole high energy experience. But anyway, it just comes down to just loving to code. But the thing you quickly run into, probably all of you, is that you get this really cool project, you really go heads down, you start building some really, some code that you think is awesome. And then you get to the point where you start testing it, and you find out, hey, this goes from fun to hard work very quickly. Trying to make your awesome code actually perform awesome can be a real pain in the rear. And TJ from Tethered earlier was commenting, kind of giving some of the background and the history of how we got up to this point now that life is actually getting much easier. The Cordova project and the big uptake there, we're seeing a lot of tools, a lot of foundational elements really come along and start to mature and make that possible. But anyway, this was an Evans data statistic, and it's a crazy statistic. When I first saw it, 40 to 60% of your time spent debugging and doing performance tuning, and this is for mobile apps. When I first saw it, I thought to myself, okay, I think I'm a pretty good developer. Probably not, but anyway, I think I am. And when I first saw that stat, I thought, what the hell? Is that me? And the more I thought about it, I was like, no, that's not me. And then, to be truthful, I probably do spend a lot of time debugging apps. And so anyway, so with that, what I found in the process of helping a large range of developers, from super novice to guys that really have their act together, when I would sit down and try to help them understand their app and kind of understand where they were, where they were at and where the problem was happening, found that almost none of them really knew how to debug or had an approach for debugging. And so kind of my personal journey along the way is just the pain of helping people and watching them struggle to debug, and then my own experiences kind of led to this chart here. At the top is a three-phase kind of a framework of, you have a fault detection, or you identify there's a bug in your system. And if you think about this very explicitly, then the next step is you isolate your problem, kind of pinpoint where's the source of the problem, and third, you recover from it. And the focus there is, you fix that bug, or if you can't fix it, you might have to redesign your system, heaven forbid, but it does happen. The 9 rules below are from David Agan's site. It's called debuggingrules.com. Very good. I'm not going to go through all of them, but definitely if you don't get anything else out of this talk, print out this slide and just pin it up near your workstation. And then the next time you're debugging, just look up at it and go, where am I on this, on this path to solving solving a problem. And so anyway, I just want to kind of give you that as kind of a background, because I find a lot of people, I have to think about this all the time whenever I'm helping debug apps, especially if you have a queue of people that need help and they're all waiting for it to be solved right away. So with that, I want to kind of transition in and start talking about GapDebug, and that really applies to debugging rule number 3. Quit thinking about your problem and go look. And to do that, you need some really good tools to kind of to drill down in and understand your problem. And so with that, this slide, I listed 4 of the really popular, well, 3 of the most popular, and I want to make GapDebug get this up in prominence, as we go forward. But these are the top 3 of the most popular debugging tools that I'm familiar with. And when I talk about debug, I'm really talking about remote debugging. And if you're not familiar with that, a remote debugger is just a tool that's able to connect to an app that's running on a device and be able to peer into it and see its runtime state and to be able to interact with it. So all of these tools do that at one level or the other. And I want to specifically call out the Safari WebKit Inspector and the Chrome Dev tools. These are hands down the best tools that are out there right now for their respective platforms. They're both very similar in their capabilities, but they're focused on either supporting iOS or Android. And so if you're working kind of in an environment where I'm constantly seeing cross-platform issues, both apps that are written, someone will send it to me and go, hey, it runs great on iOS and it sucks on Android, or vice versa. Help me. How do I move forward? Well, that really led us to, when I say us, I have another developer, Vadim Riddish, who is an excellent just developer, kind of can solve any problem that you throw at him. He and I work on this, and we put together GapDebug. So the feature set of and I'm going to go into a demo in just a minute, but the feature set really kind of runs like this. It's kind of the evolution of the product. We started with kind of the core debugging services and capabilities you're used to seeing in these newer debugging type tools. That would be your DOM inspectors, JS console, timeline, profiling kind of capabilities. And then we kept moving on down the line, trying to add more of the features that we would see from if you're working, say, with an XDK from Intel or PhoneGap build, where you may not have the whole developer tool stack on your desk, but you may be building in the cloud, and then the thing you get back down from the cloud is just binary file that you go, well, what do I do? I can install it and I run it. But so we wanted to help users be able to install applications, make it very simple. Then we found that the more we worked with with tools like the Chrome Debugger, the Chrome development tools, and the WebKit Inspector, there were just little annoying nuances in them that we wanted to make better. So that led us to focusing more on debugging, session management around debugging, and then finally just a little experimental capability called snippets that we've added in just recently, just a couple of days ago, actually. That it's kind of neat. It's experimental, and I'll show it to you in a minute. We can see, basically we're going to look for feedback and see if it's something that we'll continue to developing, pushing a little bit further along. The other thing is we wanted a development tool that our debugging environment that would run on both Windows and OS X. So I'm on a Windows machine. I'm not sure if I'm the only one today that's been up here without a Mac, but I do have a Mac. But anyway, I brought this one specifically to show you what a lot of users run into out there, especially if they're working like with the PhoneGap build type environment. So we wanted to run on Windows and OS X and to support Android and iOS specifically. This slide right here, and I'm going to jump into a demo right after this. This slide should really be how does it work? At the core layer of GapDebug is a device connector service, and then on top of that, we have a web API, and then you're able to plug in tools to it. And so the first thing we started experimenting with is, hey, well, let's plug in some debuggers. I already shared with you that WebKit Inspector and the Chrome Dev tools, right now they are the best tools out there. It's just 2 developers. We're not going to try to compete with them. We're going to try to embrace what they've done and then extend it where it makes sense. And then maybe it'll either get rolled back into those tools or it'll take on a life of its own. So, so what we did on this layer here is we were able to plug in both a integrated version of WebKit Inspector and the Chrome developer tools. They're both open source, and so we pulled them down, kind of made them adapt them to work with our system, and then we started building additional utilities as we worked with this more and more. So with that, I'm going to jump in and show you what GapDebug actually looks like. So it's run on Windows. I'm going to launch it up out of here, out of the tray. So should be starting up. There it goes. Okay, so just to kind of give you the lay of the land here. Over here on the left, on the left-hand side is a device panel, and so GapDebug can support multiple connected devices and also multiple applications. So you can be debugging apps, multiple apps on the same machine, or multiple apps across different machines. We have some settings that allow you to go in and be able to configure it to debug not only native Cordova applications, but also say mobile applications running in Safari or Chrome. Over here on this right-hand side, we've got some integrated help that just loads off the web, and then your inspectors will occupy this area over here. So let me just kick off. I've got a little iPhone here I'm going to plug in, and unfortunately, guys, my little reflector service to show the display of my phone just is not working right, so it's just something goofing up there. But you can see as soon as I plugged in, my iPhone showed up here. The next thing I want to do is, so just kind of a workflow that I run quite frequently. Somebody will send me like an IPA file, so I just take it and I'm going to install it and start debugging it. So I just drag it up, drop it, you'll see it go through. It's going through, and it installed it. So now that it's installed, I'll just close this. So now I'll go ahead and launch the app. You see it spin up, and then I can open a debugger or an inspector on it. So now, if you're familiar with, you've been working on a Mac before, you've seen this inspector before. It's pretty much the same version of the WebKit inspector. We've done a few little tweaks and stuff to kind of make it work the way we want it to. But what the real significant thing here is, I'm debugging an iOS application on an iPhone on a Windows device using the richest set of tools that are out there right now. So we were really jazzed about this, because now users would say, well, I don't have a Mac, I can't, they just want to throw their problem over the wall at me. I say, no, install GapDebug, plug it in, and start teaching them to how to solve their own problems. So this now gives us a much greater reach in the debugging world out there right now. See, a couple of other things I wanted to show you on here. Again, I showed this to some guys at work, and the first thing they thought was, and this is literally, verbatim, this one guy said, "Is that a stupid pet trick you're doing?" And I was like, so first I was kind of pissed off, and then I was like, no, it's the real deal. So, so just to quickly just kind of click through, you've got your ability to look at your resource view, timelines, your debugger. In debugger, you can set all your breakpoints. So you can dive down into the app, your app pretty deeply in the console. All that's there. And then also under your resources, you can plug in and look at if you're using like the SQL database, and same thing for local storage. Let's see, probably just kind of in the essence of time, I'm not going to kind of dig into that any deeper, but I do want to show you this cool thing that just came up yesterday when I was traveling. A guy at work, he uses the PhoneGap build service, and he called me and goes, "Hey man, something's really corrupted and crazy on PhoneGap build." And I was like, "So what's the story?" He goes, "Well, I'm gonna send you my app, and I want you to see this." So this is a little conference QR code scanning app that some of our marketing guys put together. So here you can see it right here, just spun up. Give it just a second to load, and then under the timeline, I'll just start recording the timeline there. See, I'll close this down so we have a little bit more room in the UI. But check this out. This was something that, so he comes up and goes, "What the heck? My app is like phoning home to debug build PhoneGap, .com, and I was like, he goes, those guys are like stealing my code or my content. I was like, no. So I looked at it, I was like, no, this isn't it at all. This is the winery debugging protocol injected into the app by PhoneGap build when you set the debug context on it. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. So I showed it to him. He's the same guy that thought I was doing a stupid pet trick. And so I showed it to him. He goes, that's pretty cool. So I converted him almost immediately. Anyway, the cool part is you can plug in, you can see a huge number of aspects of your application, and you're instantly smarter about it, especially if it's got some bugs and things like that in it. The other thing I'll show you just real quick is we do this a lot. I get somebody who would tell me, hey, my device ready handler is not firing, Cordova's stupid, and it's like, and I go, so what we tell them to do is like, hey, go in, set a breakpoint down into your handler and just reload it. So you can just go in and if you could, oops, hang on, here we go. So anyway, you just click this little button, and if you used it before, it'll reload your application, started the index HTML, and the whole content loads again. You can see all your handlers fire, and boom, you can fix those kind of problems in like no time flat. Just makes it super simple. And I've seen so many people write these come up with these crazy approaches for solving that problem. I'm like, mine's a one click, I don't have to write any code or do anything like that to mess around with it. So with that, I want to show you, take it just a little bit further, and I have a Nexus 7. I've seen a few of these up here today. So I'm going to plug this bad boy in, and it should come up here. Come on. Oh, plug the other end in. That was one of the debugging rules. Make sure it's plugged in. So anyway, a little embarrassing. All right, so here's the Nexus 7. You can see it just showed up here in my device panel. I'm going to collapse the iPhone apps and just kind of get them out of the way. And I'm going to launch the same app I was showing you on iOS, but this is the PhoneGap app demo, and it'll spin up here. A couple things I want to show you that are really kind of cool. Let's see if I set this up right. So if you guys have seen if you haven't seen kind of the latest version of the Chrome developer tools, they're implementing a screencast capability. It's really, really sweet. And we started using this a lot more in kind of a remote debugging mode. But here you can see this is the user interface of my app here. Oops. And you can go through, you can click through the UI and see it running. So this is really helpful now when you're working remotely. And so here's an example, like just running like the accelerometer. Oops, I'm sorry, I keep turning that. See if it'll come back up. So here's our accelerometer, and you can just kind of spin it around a little bit and it'll just plot it out. But anyway, again, you can use the same debugging tools and capabilities. You can plug in, you can watch anything happening across the board. You can write conditional breakpoints. So say if you were just doing signal analysis, you want to find out when something goes a little goofy, you just write a little snippet of code, plug it in there, and boom, you'd be able to find that. So the last thing I want to kind of wrap up with is this thing we started, I mentioned earlier, is I call them Cordova API snippets. And what we did was the Chrome developer tools already have this snippet mechanism. And so we just created a bunch of snippets based on the Cordova documentation. So when you guys are learning what I found is when I'm learning the Cordova, working with a new plugin or the API, you open up the docs, they give you all these little snippets of code. We thought, man, it'd be cool to be able to run that snippet, because I can't tell how many times I've seen those snippets of code copied into people's applications. So what we did was we just came up with the ability to basically install a set of snippets. They're not really super special code or anything like that. They're just little pieces of code that you can go and run and say, for instance, you can open up and this code was copied right out of your out of the Cordova documentation. But you can spin it up and you can go and run it. You can see and basically dribble stuff out to the console out. I can spin this around the compass heading. You can see it's just sitting there, updating probably about every 3 seconds down here at the bottom section. And when you get finished, you can go back and just clear it. But these little pieces of code can be really, really helpful. Where this whole idea came from was a guy named Lee Crosley. I don't know if any of you guys have heard about him, but he posted this Cordova plugin about 2-3 weeks ago, and it's a pedometer plugin, and it'll actually count steps, estimate mileage, flights of stairs and stuff. And he posted it out, and I've seen a lot of really bad plugins out there, and so I've been burned by kind of trying to write a little application that uses the API, and then I go through having to debug, and I wrote all this other code that I end up screwing up, trying to figure out kind of if they're not poorly documented. So what I did was, Lee posted it, I said, hey, you know what, I just got I have this little app that really doesn't do anything but just collect plugins, and I just jam plugins into it, all day long, spin it up, build it, open it up in GapDebug. Takes about 5 minutes to do that. Nowadays, once you kind of get your process all automated. But what I did was I just went into our little snippet editor here, and you can add your own little snippets, or you can just write directly into the JS console. And what I was able to do is just write a little piece of kind of the smallest unit of code that I can think of that would exercise this API, because if I decided that if I was going to try it out, I wanted to fail fast, and the quickest way I could think of is write the smallest bit of code, throw it away. If this thing sucks, then I'm done. And also, by just writing a small amount of code, I don't really have to worry too much about my integration. Either the API works or it doesn't work, and I can isolate the problem to, or I can build confidence that the API works before I build something more, a little bit bigger. So with that, that's pretty much what I wanted to show you in GapDebug. Let me just kind of wrap up here. I've got a couple more slides, so I want to go through. This slide probably, I don't know if it's really titled correctly. What I really want to just point out is with the GapDebug model, you don't have to modify your code. It's to make an app that's debuggable, just requires basically configuration changes or build time type changes. The other thing is that I really like about it is because your device is connected by a USB cable, they don't really have to be on the network. So you can test offline mode applications super easy. Your phone, even your machine doesn't have to be online. So you're sitting on a bus or somewhere, you can actually get work done in debugging applications. The Winery, which is very popular out there, has a little heavier integration requirements. You have to modify your code, you add a script tag to it, you have to have a server running, and you have to be online for that for it to work. And it's also really a subset of the full inspection tools that we really were striving for. I mentioned a little bit about, hey, how do you make an app debuggable for GapDebug? If you're building on iOS, it's really simple. You just sign your app with a developer certificate and a provision profile. If you're building Android, you just mainly need to add the Android debuggable attribute, just set it to true, and add that to the application element in your Android manifest file. Really simple, set that up, run a build. You don't actually have to change any of your code. GapDebug's really very new. We just rolled out the production version a couple days ago, so it's just an infant right now, but it's already got a lot of capabilities and a lot of utility, and so we're really excited about it. And so when if you've worked on any product, once you kind of get it out the door, like, oh, we're going to build all these other cool things, but we actually are. A couple of things that we're really excited about is first of all, debugger extensions. So if you're using like Sencha or doing Angular development, there are add-ons for the debuggers, excuse me, that can be really helpful for drilling into your model and kind of getting a different view. So we want to be able to support those. The other thing we've been asked about is, hey, can I get an API to plug this into my IDE? So for instance, the whole UI that I was showing you, you can completely tear that off. You can build another UI. It's very simple to reskin it or to just re-implement it in your own way or plug it into other tools. So that's one thing we're really excited about. The snippet stuff I showed you, it only runs right now in Android. If it really pans out, we will target to run on iOS as well, and to be able to move these in kind of an interchange model for snippets. So we're excited about that. The last one I'm really going to talk about right now is true remote debugging. I was telling you that the UI that I was showing you talks through a web layer to our backend device services or device connection services. So what that does is it inherently makes it distributable. So right now, the developer that I work with is in Europe. I'm over here I'm in Dallas, and so we quite frequently will just spin up, a debug session if we're looking at a problem or you need a second pair of eyes. I'll just say, hey, connect up to my device, look at this app, and so it really is true remote debugging or distributed debugging. So it's really neat. Right now, it's not the tool doesn't make it super easy to set that up, but that's something we're going to be making just kind of inherently, out of the box, very easy to use. And kind of the last three final thoughts I want to share with you. Going all the way back to kind of my journey through debugging and putting together kind of a framework and a process in that one slide I was sharing you. If you haven't thought about it, take a look at just some of the practices and around debugging. I can't think of any organization I've ever worked at that actually took debugging serious. But when they start thinking about the statistics of, hey, we need to be better at this, we could actually be more efficient. That slide that I put up there is a starting point. So I'm going to post this online next week when I get back in town. And so definitely take a look at that. The second one, rule number 3, when you find yourself at the point of stop thinking about your problem and go look, you're going to need some debugging tools. I encourage you to give GapDebug a chance. Check it out. It's free. There's no hooks or strings or anything attached to it. And then lastly, I'm just kind of coming back around. Something that's really fun for me is when I can get back to coding, and I hope it is for you. I hope that as you go forward that all your coding is a joyous experience. And with that, I'm Wayne Parrott, and I want to thank you for your time.